Audience description is a very interesting and almost infinite definition with wide possibilities. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as the expression of human creative skill and imagination. The keyword here is human. Nowadays, technology has advanced so much, we have entered in an era of artificial intelligence. It gets so bad that people are using these advanced technologies to create artwork. But let's go back just a couple centuries ago, where art making was very complex. From gathering materials to the cost of learning how to draw and paint, and even being able to be at the right place and at the right time to learn these skills. Although the art world in 19th century was very rooted in its customs, that activities like painting on site in nature were unheard of. How it is worth mentioning that, however, the passion was still there, and many artists, despite suffering from mental illnesses, created artworks that were not only great at that time, that also transcended cultures and time itself, to break down from the academic norms from their time and create a fantastic piece that transcends time. We're talking in this video about La Promenade from artist Pierre Renoir and Irises by Vincent van Gogh. These pieces are now being shown at the Getty Museum. Before going in deep about the artworks and why they were significant for their time and they transcended their culture and became universal, it is important to discuss the artists themselves. A leader of the Impressionist movement, Pierre Renoir, was born in France in 1841. Renoir was a French painter whose eyes for beauty made him a popular practitioner. Best known for his paintings of bustling Parisian modernity and leisure during the 19th century. Despite being a celebrated colorist, Renoir began exploring Renaissance painting in the mid-19th century, learning him to integrate more lines and composition into his mature work, creating some of the most timeless canvases of his era. He grew up in an artisan family. Around 1845, his father, a tailor with 7 children, moved to Paris. Renoir showed his talent early, and his parents noticed his talent at the age of 13 when they apprenticed him to work in a porcelain factory. After that, he painted fans and then the cloth panels with religious themes for missionaries outside of his church. His skills and the pleasure he took in his work soon convinced him to study painting. And in 1962, he decided to take evening drawing lessons and anatomy courses with the money that he had been saving at that time. With every training, Renoir as an artist would go on and create one of the most magnificent pieces that he had in his collection. At the age of 29, he created a very interesting piece that brings the beauty and sensuality of nature, and it sits today in the same room of paintings like Van Gogh's. And that piece is interesting, had no name designed by Renoir and had to be named later after the painting was rediscovered. La Promenade is a painting depicting a young couple. They're presumed to be lovers in a natural setting filled with grass and trees. Renoir has spent the previous summer painting outdoors with Claude Monet, who encouraged him to move towards a lighter, more luminous palette and to indulge in his penchant for luscious, feathery brushwork. In Renoir's work, he was able to evoke the vibrancy of the sky, the shimmering foliage, and the luminosity of the young woman's skin in the outdoor environment by using small multicolored strokes. Seeing the upper position, the man has a rustic wardrobe, making him contrast hardly with the woman up front of him, that she is wearing a beautiful dress it is so long that touches the high grass on the floor, almost blending in. Many critics at that time, when the painting came out, criticized heavily on the selection of Renoir's setting by stating, "If Mr. Renoir wants to show a young woman in her Sunday best, you'll think that the least he could do is put her on a clean dress." Perhaps this critic didn't understand the art movement that Renoir was trying to display in this piece, or simply choose to ignore it. But many do agree with that sentiment, and seeing that the lady's dress was painted in a way that it looked dirty and not appealing to the beauty standards of that time. Master painter Vincent van Gogh was born in 1853 in the Netherlands and died in France in 1890. As a child, he tried many things, but he was unable to commit to anything until his brother recommended that he would try to enter the art world since he was talented for drawing. The recommendation from his brother motivated him to draw more and train for painting. He seemed to enjoy painting people during everyday situations like suppers. As an artist, he developed incredibly well when he decided to live and work with his brother in Paris. Paris at that time was the capital of the art world, where many artists were in that city. He drew inspiration from many artists in Paris when creating new works. As Van Gogh grew older and became more skillful in his art, his mental health deteriorated to the point where he was confined to a mental asylum in the south of France because of self-mutilation. He created a piece that will become his most famous work. And despite spending just a year in that mental asylum, it would be difficult for him to make Irises and The Starry Night, which is his more famous painting, without these conditions of confinement. He had a view of the rural areas of France, and Van Gogh contemplated the sky for long periods of time during day and night. In the composition of The Starry Night, he even detailed the church, and you can see a tall tree that make up a third of the composition. And he will go on and say that this wonderful vacuum between still life and landscape and botanical study. But the artist is also drawing on art from Japan, seen in irises. Van Gogh was passionate about bright pastel colors, researching as many cultural styles as he could in Paris. Because he lacked the funds necessary to be able to afford models, he decided that he would pose in the mirror and do a lot of self-portraits. The ability to be resourceful was the key for Van Gogh to be this skillful and develop his career further along in Paris. Instead of using a paint itself to check if the colors combine the way that he wanted to, he would use wool balls to check if the colors combined made the right combination. Right now, these wood balls are in an Amsterdam museum dedicated to Van Gogh. The wonderful depictions of nature by Vincent van Gogh in his work Irises, created in 1889. During his stay in the asylum in the south of France, Van Gogh painted irises. Having self-mutilated himself several times, he realized that he needed help and checked himself into the asylum, where he only lasted a year. Van Gogh completed 130 paintings during his first week in that asylum. His intent was to convey the viewer of what amazing morning he had that day, and it was to walk into the gardens and how glorious of a morning that was. It was a manifestation of serenity to see the amazing flowers and the crop view conveys a sense of overflowing, as if the flowers were coming out of the canvas, as if the painting evoked a breath of fresh air with the warm sun hitting the skin of anyone who glances at it. It is almost resemble such a beautiful day in the yard in this painting. Finally, we can conclude that these artworks helps us understand how culture and beauty standards were perceived in the 19th century. It is a testimony of how hard these incredible artists work despite their limitations to create a window of nature with the strokes that had deep cuts of color and they were vibrant at the same time. The adequate spacing from the frames, exactly what the viewer needed to see. These artworks are located in the Getty Museum. The Getty Museum is an extensive collection of artworks that you will find from different periods of time that illustrates how art had developed over time. The museum was established in 1974 by art collector and businessman J. Paul Getty. He opened a museum on his property in Los Angeles, California. And in this museum, art pieces from all over the world throughout time are exhibited for free for anyone that wants to see them. Inside the premises, located in the West Pavilion building that showcases artwork from the 19th century, we find the artworks of Irises by Vincent van Gogh, a star painting in the museum, and La Promenade by artist Pierre Renoir. Very interesting collection that showcases the most beautiful artworks of Europe.